This is 2.2, creating and initializing objects. And then it says constructors. So we are creating these objects from classes. And just as a review, it says a Java class defines what objects of the class know, which are attributes, and what they do, behaviors. So, in some programming languages, they refer to attributes as properties, right? And our methods will be the behaviors of what an object can do. All right. So it says each class, and this is a new vocab word, it says each class has constructors. All right. I briefly kind of glazed over this and didn't put a name to it yet because, like I said, in Java, sometimes you use things without knowing what they are at first, just to get started. God bless you. And it says each class has constructors like world and turtle, which are used to initialize the attributes in a newly created object. So we're going to create objects from these classes. Okay, a new object is created with the new keyword. I mentioned it before, but a keyword is a word specifically designed by the programming language, in this case, Java. And it's a keyword letting the computer know what to do. Okay, so like int, you can't name a variable int because when you type in int, the computer reads that as a keyword. And that's a reserved keyword that you cannot use. Okay, so you can name your variables whatever you want, but you cannot use a keyword because those have been saved for the Java programming language. Okay, so new. It says the new object is created with the new keyword followed by the class name. So when we created our world down here, right, I've highlighted it. We wrote world to say, all right, we're going to use the class world and we're going to create an object from it. We're going to name this object habitat. And this is going to be a new version of the class. So that's how you would construct it and create an object. This entire line, right, is a constructor. So when this code executes, it creates a new object of the specified class and calls a constructor, which has the same name as the class. For example, new world creates and initializes a new object from the world class. Okay, so it's saying, all right, this is a new object from the world class, and we're going to call this object habitat. They put a comment next to it and they said, create a new world object. All right. And then it says the new turtle, and you're passing it its habitat, initializes the turtle in the world habitat that you created. All right. In this case, they didn't name the turtle Myrtle, or what was the other one they had before? Myrtle and Yertle. Okay. Or Steve. They named it T. Right. You can name your turtle whatever you want. You can create multiple turtles. You can create multiple objects from classes. That's a key concept. All right. You can create multiple objects from one class, which then saves you lines of code. And if you were to make edits to your object and then realize, oh, wait, I want these edits to be made across all of my turtles, you could have just edited what was inside of the class and then created objects from that class that already have the same properties and same attributes. So it's a way to save time, right? These tools that we're given are meant to save time and to help us. Overloading constructors says there can be more than one constructor defined in a class. This is called overloading the constructor. Okay, this isn't particularly important, but we want to touch on this. It says there's usually a constructor that has no parameters, nothing inside the parentheses, following the name of the constructor. Okay, so we talked about arguments in the last lesson, And now we have this word called, it says parameter, right? And if you look down here, a parameter is what it expects. When we originally create an object, or when we originally create a class, we know what the parameters should be, right? So it's saying the parameters of what they expect to be passed in is a width, and they expect a height to be passed in. When a number is actually passed into there, that is called an argument. And people confuse arguments and parameters often, okay? And there are questions that will ask you the difference between arguments and parameters, but really the main difference is when you're actually using it and you're putting some sort of value into that method, that is its argument. Once it's being received and processed, that same data is called a parameter. So when it's first processed, it's called an argument, or sorry, when it's first received, it's called an argument. When it's being processed, it's called a parameter. And some people accidentally interchange the definitions of the two. Okay, so if you don't understand the difference between an argument and a parameter, that's fine right now. It's just introducing this concept. Okay, it says there's also called no argument constructors. The no argument constructor usually sets the attributes of the object to default values. And that's what we were using before, right? When we create a new world, that was a no argument constructor. Okay. This received one argument. It received the habitat. Okay. There can also be other constructors that take parameters like the turtle habitat. All right. The turtle habitat constructor calls, like we said above, a parameter is also called actual parameter. It's not also called argument. That is incorrect. That is incorrect. This line right here, I'm going to say it loudly, is incorrect. Whoever wrote that is not correct. A parameter is not an argument. Okay, I have no idea why they put that in there. So if you read this on your own, you can become very confused. This is why people become confused between parameters and arguments. Okay, a parameter is not an argument. A parameter is what they expect. An argument is actually what is entered. Okay, an argument becomes a parameter, and a parameter is expected. I don't know why they said that, because an argument is not a parameter. Should. If you get a like entry-level computer science or programming job, and you start using the word argument where parameter should be used, they will correct you very quickly, right? And it might seem very like tedious, right? And a lot of people like, some people just like let it go and just use it interchangeably, but they are different, and it's important to know the difference. And the scope of that I can't necessarily discuss right now, but I'm guessing someone who wrote this textbook is a teacher who's just writing all this down and maybe hasn't been programming for very long. But a parameter is not an argument. It's wrong. And I can write to them and tell them that's not true. Okay. On the AP Computer Science Principles exam, there are specific questions about the differences between arguments and parameters. And I know because I've seen the exams and we've done the practice test. So please don't get in your mind that parameter and argument can be used interchangeably. So now when I read through this, I'm going to have, if they're interchanging these words, I'm going to have to change this up. Okay. And I will help you distinguish between the two along the way. It says it can be used to initialize the attribute of an object. The world class actually has two constructors. It doesn't take any parameters. And one takes the words, sorry. The world class actually takes two constructors. One doesn't take any parameters. It should say one doesn't take, that's why I was confused. One doesn't take any arguments, and one takes the world's width and height. Okay, so really whatever's being passed into world here, it's saying, hey, look, there's not an argument passed into here. It expects a certain parameter. An argument would be the number passed in. Okay. These are the parameters it expects. It could expect a width and a height. Remember when we create our world and I didn't know, I said, I don't know what the default was. It was 100 by 100, right? And also if you move forward and you don't put a specific argument in there, it expects one parameter, right? But if you don't put anything in there, then it just automatically defaults to 100. Okay, new world, and it says width and height. You could put, it expects two parameters. You could put two arguments in there. All right, might be confusing. We're going to clarify it. Which of these is overloading? And if we look at the overloading, it says there can be more than one constructor defined in a class. It says which of these is overloading? When a constructor takes one parameter, when a constructor takes more than one parameter, when one constructor is defined in the class, when more than one constructor is defined in a class. Check. That's true. It's not that it takes one parameter, it's that it's defined as two separate ways. Overloading means that there is more than one constructor. Which of these is valid syntax for creating and initializing a world object? All right, capital world, good. Everything's the same up until this equal sign. Okay, we want to have a new keyword. We want to write that we're creating from the world class. We didn't pass it any argument. It could accept, remember, two parameters. So it's a parameter is what it could. So like, all right, so I'm originally creating a class. If I were to create a class and it could accept certain parameters, once you actually put the number in there, that's called an argument. But if you haven't actually put anything in it yet and it's being defined behind the scenes, it's called a parameter. Once the argument has been taken in to the world class, we haven't even looked inside the turtle class yet. We haven't looked inside of it. But once that argument has been passed into it, it accepts that parameter, right? And then moves it through the class and then manipulates it in a certain way. So it's very easy to confuse the two. And I just believe it's a concept that maybe they just bypassed and said, hey, I'm not going to touch on it right now. But as you go through and study computer science, if you study computer science in college, there is a huge difference between arguments and parameters, right? So if I were to say arguments versus parameters. Okay, function parameters are the names listed in the function's definition. We haven't actually even seen what's inside the function or the class yet, right? So functions arguments are the real values. So the values, the numbers that are actually passed into it are the arguments. What it's accepting is saying, hey, I can accept once I accept these few parameters. So that's important because if you're especially debugging code, you want to see whether the problem is with the argument that's being passed in, or if it's something that's wrong that you did in the parameters behind the scenes. Okay, so you can identify, is it the user's fault or is it my fault? 222, the world class constructors. Okay, the constructor that doesn't take any parameters, world, creates a graphical window with 640 by 480. Okay, so that's the default. It's not 100 by 100. The default is 640 by 480. The world, and then it accepts a width and accepts a height, right? Behind the scenes, the parameters that were set is, hey, I need to make sure I'm setting very specific parameters. I'm setting that these will be ints that are passed into this. If you were to type the word 10, it won't accept that argument that you type in. The parameters that you've set will not accept that argument, okay? So if they're just going to use the word parameters over and over and over, I'm going to be very specific, okay? Constructors take two integer parameters and initialize the world's object width and height to them. For example, new world 300, 400, 300 and 400 are your arguments. Okay, those are passed in, and then to see if they're actually accepted by the parameters, create a 300 by 400 pixel world. So we created this world. If we want to create a 300 by 400 world, that's what we would write, right? We created two worlds here. We created a world. Remember, default, the world is 640 by 480. You don't need to memorize that, right? We're not memorizing that. That's just saying that's what we're using. Creates a 640 by 480 world. Okay. The turtle world does not use the Cartesian coordinate system. Top left corner is 0, 0. Okay. X increases to the right. Y increases toward the bottom of the page. All right. So the coordinate 0, 0 is the top left of the turtle world. The top left. That's important to know. The turtle class 223, the turtle class constructors. It says the turtle class also has multiple constructors, although it always requires a world as the parameter in order to have a place to draw the turtle. Okay, the default location, remember how we started before, it was right in the middle. So it automatically drops your turtle right in the middle of the world, unless you set a different start location. Okay, there's another turtle constructor that places the turtle at a certain XY location in the world. Okay, so for example, if you want your turtle to start at 50, 100, okay, 50, 100 world. 0, 0 will start you up in the top left corner, which is different from what we talk about with our coordinate plane from a mathematical perspective. They should have just done it 0, 0 in the middle, but oh well. It probably makes sense and probably easier to program that way because 0, 0 changes based on the size of the actual world that you're creating. Okay, notice that the order of the parameters matter. You can't just start typing in random numbers here or type in world 50, 100. Okay, we very specifically put parameters in place. So really, it should say, notice that the order of the arguments that you enter actually matter. Okay, if you're entering 50 and 100, and then you want to place it in world 1, you have to type it in that order. Because behind the scenes, you're creating these parameters that it's going to be taking. Okay, the turtle constructor takes, okay, X, Y, and world as parameters in that order. If you mix them up, then it will cause an error because it won't understand what you're trying to do. Okay, this is one reason why programming languages have data types. Okay, which of these is valid syntax for creating initializing a turtle object in world 1? So remember that we can create a turtle object in world 1 and put it at 50, 100, and then we have to enter the world at the end. It could just say new turtle with no world, right? Or we could say new turtle and then put the specific world that we wanted in. Okay, so this line works. Initializing a turtle in world 1. So this line doesn't work because it doesn't have new. I'm sorry. This line doesn't put it in world 1. This one tries to put it in world 1, but accidentally puts it as the very first argument instead of the last argument. Okay, so it would be D. Okay, make sure it has the new turtle. Okay, try changing the code below to create a world object with 300 by 400 pixels. Where is the turtle placed by default? Okay, what parameters do you need to pass? So what arguments do you need to pass the turtle constructor to put the turtle at the top right corner? Okay, experiment and find out. What happens if you mix up the order of the parameters? All right, so we'll do one at a time. It says try changing the code below to create a world object 300 by 400. I guess not creating a world object. Creating a world object by 300 by 400. Okay, so we created that world object. Where is the turtle placed by default? The turtle should be placed right in the middle, and it is. Okay, by default, the turtle will be placed in the middle of the screen or the middle of the world. What argument do you need to pass to the turtle to put it in the top right corner? Okay, remember that 0, 0 was up here. Okay, if this is a 300 by 400, then I'm guessing the X value would need to be 300 and the Y value still be 0, right? So we'll pass it 300, 0, and then world 1. Let's try it out. And we're able to put it in the top corner. Okay, so if we were using a normal coordinate plane that we use to plot points, X, Y values in a math class, right? 0, 0 would be right here, but 0, 0 is actually located up here with the turtle class. In order to identify the X value, it's the first one. The second value is Y. So X value, Y value, and then what world you want to put it in. What happens if you mix up the order of the parameters? It's not going to run, right? If I were to put that at the end, and I'll just show you the error that you get. If you put the world and then just put the X and Y value at the end, it says there were errors compiling your code. And the error that I get, it identifies, it say, hey, it's in this line somewhere. And it says int picture is not applicable. Okay. Okay. Meaning that you tried passing the picture and then int. So we need to change that back up. And run it. And it puts it in the top right corner for me. All right. 224, it says object variables and references. You can also declare an object variable and initialize it to null. Okay, we haven't talked about null yet. And it says an object variable holds a reference to an object. A reference is a way to find the object in memory. It's like a tracking number that you can use to track the location of a package. Okay, so when you declare an object variable, you can initialize it to null. And I'm going to go ahead and skip over this video. I'll start it.
Whenever we run
but we're going to touch more on this. This is, if you didn't know what null is, this is what null is. The code turtle T1 is assigned null, creates a variable, creates T1, and refers to a turtle object. But the null means that it doesn't refer to an object yet. Okay, you could later create an object and set the object variable to refer to that new object. Okay, so later on, I could actually refer to the turtle class and just say T1. So if you just want to create it in the beginning and just say, hey, I'm going to use this later, you've went ahead and created the variable T1. Okay, you've already created it, but you haven't actually put any value to it yet. Okay, so you could do that. I don't see the point of it. I think they're just teaching that for a conceptual reason. I don't know what the use would be. Maybe they explore this a little bit more, but I mean, there's not really a use for that. I guess they show you that in case someone uses a null and you're like, what is null? Right? Just saying, hey, we're going to touch on this later. I'll just go assign it null. I don't know what I want it to do yet. I might come back to it later. And later on, you already have T1, so you don't have to write turtle in front of it. So I have T1 equals new turtle, and it's going to go in the turtle world. Okay. More commonly, you can declare the object variable initialized in the same line of code. Exactly. More commonly, It's what we've been doing. I don't know why they're trying to confuse you and add different things. It's basically like, hey, look, this is the way 99.9% of the time you should do it. But just in case, some people do this. And those are probably beginner programmers or people who are just trying to confuse you. Sometimes I feel like people in computer science just try to pick like difficult ways or like games to play with you just to make things confusing. When really, like, if you break this down, it's not, but they they like to confuse you. All right, so it says world one, you're creating a new world. I don't know why you would want to create a turtle like this, right? I wouldn't get in the habit of creating turtles like this. I would create it the way that we just previously learned, right? Maybe it's because they want to introduce what null is. Yes.
Another function though that like takes some data and generates a turtle. If something goes wrong, you might return null. Like
Yeah.
in case, and you might need to check the object null. That might be the case. It would be like
Yeah.
If something goes wrong, rather than trying to return empty reference to a turtle object, return null. Yeah,
and exactly. And you see there are always ways. I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't know why they would be teaching this like this early. Especially when I'd say that'd be more of like a when we start talking about exceptions and we start talking about debugging and some errors. I would see the point of maybe touching on it, but when you're first learning about this, it might necessarily be something you hold back on. But I mean, we'll learn it. We'll go through it. There's different ways, and I mean that is a very good use for it as well. 225 constructor signatures. It says when you use a class that someone has already written for you in a library, okay, that you can import, or an API. You can import the turtle class above. You can look up to see how to use the constructors and methods in the documentation. And they have some documentation for it, right? If you go to the class turtle, they talk about what objects or what parameters they expect, what arguments can be passed into it, different methods that exist. We talked about forward. We talked about backward. We talked about turn left, turn right, but these are all the different methods that you could use. We talked about pen up, set visible, right? We could make it invisible, the turtle that's being passed. So that's the documentation for it. If you want to take a look through it, you can. The documentation will list the signatures or headers of the constructors or methods, which will tell you their name and parameter list. The parameter list in the header of a constructor lists the formal parameters, declaring the variables that will be passed in as values and their data types. Okay. Constructors are overloaded when there are multiple constructors, but the constructors have different signatures. Okay. So it's just naming this its signature, right? For example, here are two constructors for the turtle class that take different parameters. We've already briefly touched on this, but it's just saying these are constructor signatures. From the public class turtle, right? It says constructs a turtle object in the turtle world, public turtle world W. We are going to go ahead and create this world W. Constructs, and this is what's going on behind the scenes, right? This is what's actually inside the turtle class. So we know when we're using the turtle class, we know that we're supposed to enter certain arguments, but these are the parameters that are actually being accepted behind the scenes. Knowing that when someone actually creates a new object from the turtle class and they're entering in arguments, these parameters are what are being accepted, okay? So these are your parameter saying, hey, we're going to go ahead and accept an integer here. We're going to accept an integer here. Or we're just going to accept the world name. All right. So it says, given the turtle class in the figure above and a world object world one, which of the following code segments will correctly create an instance of a turtle object at XY coordinates 50, 150? Okay. And we're using world1. So making sure that says in the figure above and a world object world1. So we're passing it. Not only are we passing it its X value, its Y value, but also the world. So it would be E. All right. We don't put world1 in the beginning. We would put world1 at the end. This one, we specifically said we want to pass at 5100. This one, we didn't pass a world2. This one, we didn't pass 5100 or world. Which of these is the correct signature for a no argument constructor? Okay. So if you're not receiving any arguments, okay, so this would be the parameter that's accepting, right? This would be the parameter. This one does not have any arguments being accepted or behind the scenes setting any parameters. So I'm going to go ahead and list this one. This one doesn't have parentheses. This one accepts with. Okay. It says in unit 5, you will learn how to write your own classes. Awesome. Writing classes is a huge part of object-oriented programming. However, if you see class definition on the AP exam, like the one below for a class called date, you should be able to pick out the attributes, instance variables, and the constructors and know how to use them. Okay, so if we have a class called date, public class date, we're assigning these instance variables, which are also attributes. Okay, we have a private variable, which we'll touch on in a little bit, the difference between public and private. So far, we've been using public, meaning it can be seen by everything. But we're using these private variables that can only be seen inside of this class. So the int year, int month, int day. And then you have these constructors that exist. You have a public date that just doesn't pass any arguments into it, doesn't receive anything. And then you have these parameters set int year, int month, int day in a public date constructor that you could create as well. All right. Click on the constructor header. Sorry, click on the constructor headers or signatures. Okay. Just ask me to click on lines, I guess. Not sure why this isn't lined up. Oh, because we're printing public void print. So I'd say here. I'd say here. And this would be public void print. I wouldn't say that would be a constructor, but let's take a look. You're correct. Okay, so the constructor is accepting several parameters here, and this one doesn't accept any parameters. Okay, given the date class in the figure above, and assuming that months in the date class are numbered starting at 1, which of the following code segments will create a date object for the date September 20th, 2020 using the correct constructor? Okay, so assuming that months in the date class are numbered starting at 1. So we would go through and see it's accepting the year first, then the month, then the day. So year first, then the month, then the day. Year, month, day. Check. That's right. Okay. Formal and actual parameters. When a constructor like date 2005-91, which I'm assuming is September 1st, 2005, is called, the formal parameters, year, month, day, are set to copies of the actual parameters or arguments. Okay, now they're just trying to confuse you, right? Because earlier on, they mentioned parameters are the same thing as arguments. Now they're differentiating. Okay. are copies of the actual parameters or arguments that are being passed in. So this is, I'd say, a little bit more clear. They should have clarified in the beginning up top there, because I believe that when they first mentioned arguments and parameters, they kind of just lump them together. Okay, a parameter, also called actual parameter or argument. It's not true, because down here they pretty much contradict themselves and give you the correct definition. Maybe they had multiple people working on the same. Maybe they said, all right, you do 225, you do 224, you do 226, and we all just write it and put it all together. Maybe that's how they did it, and then weren't able to check it properly. Okay. Our set the copies of actual parameters or arguments. All right. This is call by value, which means that copies of the actual parameter values are passed to the constructor. These values are used to initialize objects attributes. Okay. So this is what I've been explaining the entire time. Okay. Actual parameters, no one calls them actual parameters. They're called arguments. Okay. Arguments. The parameters are what's actually being expected. So when you're actually using and typing in the numbers 2005, 9, 1, those are the arguments that are being passed in. And then once they're received by the class, right, they are used as parameters. Or when they're originally, I guess, identified, they're called parameters. So the type of values being passed in as arguments have to match the type. This is what I had said before in the formal parameter values. We cannot give a constructor a string object when it is expecting an int. The order of the arguments also matter. That we've already said this. If you mix up the month and day, blah, blah, blah. All right. So it says in public world, int width, int height. What are the width and height? Okay. So the width and height, I can't stand that they're calling these actual parameters. Actual parameters are arguments, formal parameters. All right. In New World 150, 200, what are 150 and 200? They are arguments, which they are also calling actual parameters. Okay. This lesson introduces a lot of vocabulary. That's true. If you feel like this has been going really fast, that's okay, because we're going to be clearing this up, and it's not something that like we're introducing. We're not expecting you to know and understand all these concepts yet. We're just introducing this so we can start to get a feel for why we've been using and creating these turtle objects. And, you know, we know the what. We're starting to learn the why and the when, but we're just briefly dipping our toe in the water. Okay, introduces a lot of vocabulary. Don't worry if you don't understand everything about classes and constructors yet. Okay, you'll learn more about it in Unit 5 when you write your own classes and constructors. We're just giving some vocab or names to things that we've been doing. Okay, and you will see parameters again and methods in the next lessons. 227 programming challenge, custom turtles. Working in pairs, so working together on this, we'll do it together. You will now look at a new class called custom turtle and design some colorful turtles with its constructors. First, as a warm-up, do the following debugging exercise. Debug the following code. All right. And I'm going to take a look at this. So we know we're importing this up here. We know we have our initial, we're creating our class. This is our main method. We're creating a world W using the new keyword, and the world is 300, 300 by 0. Interesting. Maybe I'll make it 300 by 300. Man, I wonder what happens if you leave it 300 by 0. We'll go back to this. I'll just put a comment here. Now we've created turtle T0. Okay. And that should be capitalized. And we should also, if we're not going to do anything with it, then we should probably make it void. We'll make it null. Okay. What's that? Yeah, it looks like it. T0 forward. So I don't know if we just want to say new turtle. All right, T1, new turtle. This one, we're putting it in world, and we have it start at 150, which means our world, originally we called this W, right? So world W, we're going to pass in the world. I'm going to make this 300 by 300. Also, if we're going to put this in, it has to be the last thing that we enter. Okay, we're not going to put it in the beginning. And T0 moves forward. Okay, T1 turns right, T1 turns left. You need a semicolon at the end there. World.show true. I don't know, let's run and see what happens. Errors. Turtle T0, new turtle. Int picture is not applicable. Oh, yeah, there you go. Okay, adding those turtles to the world. I guess T0, also add T1 in there and run it. Can't find symbol world.show. Oh, because it should be W, right? There is no world unless we just name the world, but we're named it W in the beginning. Okay, so it ran. What it did was, I'm guessing turtle 0, T0 was the bright green one. Okay, T1 was this one, just turned right. And T2 turned left. T2 we had start at 150. Okay. And there we go. All right. It says a custom turtle class in the active code below inherits many of its attributes and methods from the turtle class. You'll learn more about the turtle class later. Okay. However, it has some new constructors with more parameters. Customize a turtle with its body color, shell color, width, and height. So custom turtle, it has the world, it has the body, the shell, width, height. Okay, you'll use the constructors to create custom turtles below. You can specify colors like color red by using the color class in Java. Right, you can take a look at the color class and look at the different colors it accepts. Blue, dark gray, there's a list of the colors. Okay, so we can leave that open, I guess. Just create a large 150 by 200 custom turtle with a green body and a blue shell at position 150, 30. Okay, so it says change the constructor call below to create a large 150 custom turtle with new custom turtle. So we're going to pass it. If we look at custom turtle, it accepts. I'm looking at the difference between this one and this one. This one constructs a custom turtle with a specific body color, shell color, width, height in the middle of the world. And this one has a certain width. Okay, so I see. So that we put the location in the front there, and then the world body color. All right, so the first few haven't changed. Okay, so we want to put it at position 150, 300. We want it to go in world 1, and we want it to have a custom green body. So that would be the first one, body, and then I'm looking at the difference between height, position, and in the world. Specific body color. So I'm clarifying what, oh, okay, that's how big the turtle is. Okay, how big the turtle is. So the 150 by 200 would be how big the turtle is. We want to make it have a green body and a blue shell. So the body would be the first color and the shell be the second color. So we'll say color dot blue, and then we'll say color dot green, and we want the turtle to be 150 by 200. All right, let's see what that looks like. It's a big turtle. Okay, so I know we haven't completed all of it, but it created a really big turtle for us. So my code, let me go back to my code. I created this custom turtle, and the turtle starts off at 150 by 300. It's being placed in the world. Its body color the first parameter it accepts is, people looking back at this, the first one is body and the second one is shell, and it says it wants a green body and a blue shell. So it wants a green body and a blue shell. So body first, shell second. All right, and then it's going to be at position 150. I'm sorry, the size of the turtle is the last thing. It's a 150 by 200 turtle. Okay, so pretty big. And then it says create a small custom turtle with a red body and a yellow shell. So the body's first, shell second. Position. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just copy these 2 lines of code. And I'm going to go ahead and paste it. And I'll say custom turtle, let's call this turtle 2. And this turtle is going to be at position 350, 200. It's going to go in world 1. We'll say a red body, and we'll add a yellow shell. And it's going to be a 25 by 50. So I'll say 25 by 50. And move it forward. And let me run it and just see what we got so far. All right, so there's my big turtle, right? Move forward. There's my smaller turtle, moved it forward. And I passed both of the tests, but I think it still wants me to do a third thing. It says, create a custom turtle of your own design. So we'll play with that, right? We'll say, I'll copy and paste the same line. I'll create a turtle 3, create a new turtle, and it's going to be a really small turtle. I'll make it a 50 by, I don't know, 50 by 70. It's going to go in world 1. The color will be, let's check some of the colors out. I'll use black and white. How about that? Color black and color white. Oh, that's the starting location. So the starting location of it, I'll have it start there. So the size of my turtle is the last thing I want to enter. So I'll say 50 by 70 in the back end. And then the location, I don't know. I'll just say 100. I don't want to put it behind the turtle. So the world is 400 by 400. I'll have it start at around 300. Okay. And then we'll run it. Let's see what happens. There's my turtle right there. Okay. So that was creating the custom turtle. You create your own. You can play around with the colors. Down here, it's the custom turtle class, right? And you're seeing that, there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes to make this work, right? And you don't have to know what any of this is, but that's what's actually being done behind the scenes. So, someone wrote the turtle class and wrote all this code for you, and then you can use it by creating objects of that class. You don't always need to know everything that happens behind the scenes. It's good to know, but you don't have to know how to know what it says in order to use it. A lot of times that's what documentation is for. All right. So we were able to pass that. 228 summary. Constructors initialize. Okay. Constructors are what are actually creating the objects. The constructor signature is just the actual construction being taken place. We identified our constructor signature up here, right? We have our public date, and then actually what the parameters are being set behind the scenes. Okay. Overloading is when there is more than one constructor. We talked about the new keyword. We also talked about a no argument constructor that doesn't accept any values. We talked about parameters. We talked about arguments. They called arguments actual parameters. Okay. And they called formal parameters are just parameters. So actual parameters are arguments. Formal parameters are just known as parameters. Okay, when you call something by value, that means that when you pass a value to a constructor or method, it passes a copy of the value. Some AP practice, it says consider the following class. I love when it says consider. Really, it's saying look at this class. Which of the following successfully creates a new cat object? Okay, so it shows you the cat class. We see some instance variables. Some variables here that are defined: string color, string breed, Boolean, data type, is hungry. So you're going to see the cat's color, the breed of the cat, and then if it's hungry. And then we have the cat, and we have different values. This color is assigned unknown, breed is assigned unknown, and is hungry is assigned false. Okay, so those are just the defaults. And it says the cat string. So we're now accepting these values. The color will be C, the breed will be B, and is hungry is H. So as those values are passed in, the variable names are then being passed here and then pushed on to the actual cat. All right, so it says different ways we can actually create these objects. Okay, cat A is assigned new cat. It says cat B is assigned new cat short hair equals true, right? And then string color is assigned orange. Boolean hungry equals false. Cat C is assigned new cat color. The color would be orange, tabby, and then if it's hungry, it would be false. By saying unknown as the default, I would assume that 3 would need to be passed in. So I'm not sure if this would work here, but it's going to have to. So it's either 3 and 1. So this would, I guess this would create a cat as a default. So maybe we can say 1 and 3. Let's check and see if we're right. Yeah, 1 and 3. So 1 creates the cat, doesn't pass anything to it, right? We're not passing any arguments yet. B won't work because we're trying to pass it short hair, and it's out of order because it doesn't pass a color. We can't mix up the order of the arguments we're passing into it. All right, 1 and 3 call the correct constructors. Consider the following class. Let me look at this. Which of the following code segments will construct a movie object M with a title of Lion King and a rating of 8.0? All right, so we create these. It says title, the director, the rating in theaters. So when you create a movie, you're passing it its title, the director, and then also the rating. Okay. You can also pass it. I see. You can also pass it one value, right? And you can just pass it the title of the movie. Okay. In theaters, I guess it's setting it to false. Okay. So in here, I guess you can't determine whether or not it's in theaters. So movie M, new movie 8.0. The first thing it needs to accept is a title. So it can't be this one. It can accept a title and a string double. Okay. But doesn't have a rating here. So this shouldn't work because it's out of order, because we need an actual string. 8.0 is the rating, that's the double. So A and B don't work. C is not passing a movie name or the title of the movie. This is passing the title. This is passing a string, but actually, okay, and then we have the double lined up. So D should work. The question is asking, consider the following, which of the following code will construct a movie with the title Lion King and rating of 8.0. Okay, so this also gives it 8.0. Okay, the reason why this one wouldn't work is because it would be out of order. It wouldn't be accepting a string here. This one just passes it the movie title. Okay, and it says you've attempted 16 of 16 activities on this page. Completed, well done. Okay, we'll be talking more about these. If you're still confused by some of these constructors or parameters, arguments, that's okay. We'll be diving more into this later on next lesson and further on this week and next week. Okay, so that was 2.2, creating and initializing objects and constructors.